Good morning, everybody, and welcome. This is going to be an exciting conference. I'd like to acknowledge my friends here, my minister, my deputy premier, Ms. Rosa Harris, who's the director of DOT, who works very hard with us at Cayman Airways to reach this milestone. And to my right is Mr. Fabian Worms, the CEO, President of Cayman Airways, and I'm Chairman of Cayman Airways. Good morning and welcome. We at Cayman Airways are excited once again to be blazing new trails for our Cayman Islands. The introduction of the Denver route, starting March 2nd, 2019, is a milestone for Cayman Airways and the Cayman Islands. At approximately 5 hours block time from Grand Cayman, it will be the longest scheduled commercial flight that Cayman Airways has ever done. We were operated in the airlines industry for 50 years now. This is an achievement. This achievement has only been made possible thanks to the new Boeing 737-8 MAX. The first of this aircraft will be arriving this November. Launching of the Denver route is just the first of many benefits our national airline will achieve for our country thanks to the fleet modernization plan that will see Cayman Airways both having the newest jet fleet in the region while being the first Boeing 737-8 MAX aircraft operated in the Caribbean. 5 years ago, almost, we embarked on this fleet modernization plan. And when we did, we kept in mind that not only from seating capacity, more modern aircraft, but we also look at expanding new routes. And in order to do that, we needed an aircraft that had more of a longer range than we currently have in the 300s. That kind of limited us to what we could do. Now, I don't think there's any point in the United States that we can't reach with the 8 MAX. And South America, I think we can go as far as Brazil as well. We could also do flights to London, if you so choose, with a stop in Bermuda, and then on to London. So these aircraft have a lot of possibilities for Cayman Airways in the country. We're also pleased that the city of Denver is celebrating this new CAL route as the first and only Caribbean-based airline to operate non-stop service there. And according to their statistics, travel demand between Denver and Grand Cayman grew almost 10% over the past year. And with Denver being ranked as the fastest growing state for scuba divers since 2010, Denver has been a natural addition to the Cayman Airways network as a tourism route. Today, I'm most proud to say that Cayman Airways still offers the most non-stop flights to and from the Cayman Islands than any other airline serving this jurisdiction, with service to 5 major U.S. cities and 5 Caribbean and Latin American destinations, plus our crucial domestic service to and from the sister islands. Just to remind you, the way we operate under a framework called CORE, Strategic Tourism, and Domestic. And it's this strategic tourism is why we're here today and making this announcement to Denver. We've blazed a lot of new trails, forced airlines to come in and provide direct flights that they were not interested in doing before. And this is a great tool that the Cayman Islands have. I think all of the people of the Cayman Islands should be proud of Cayman Airways. We're one of the few, we're probably the only island in the Caribbean that has a national airline. And to this day, it's operating for 50 years with a great safety record. Through the tremendous leadership of our executive team and board, we have successfully grown and diversified our airline and services in many areas. As a result, I can proudly say that we are very excited about the future of our national airlines. And to add, this is a perfect example of the government Department of Tourism and Cayman Airways working hand in hand as a national strategic tool to bolster tourism in the Cayman Islands. With that, I will turn it back over to my colleague. Who's next?
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman, and a very pleasant good morning to everybody and welcome. I want to take the opportunity to congratulate the chairman and his team, the Cayman Airways family, on this milestone that's being announced today. Twice weekly flights, Wednesdays and Saturdays, starting in March 2019, gives enough time for the booking period to be implemented. We're very excited about that. And as the chairman mentioned, this is an opportunity that a lot of different people have sat in a room and contributed to the decision. We had the opportunity to look at where we could grow our arrivals from. And when we looked at the western part of the United States, we realized for us to be successful, we needed to make sure that the airlift was something that would give us a competitive advantage. To grow an opportunity like this, you need the proper marketing, you need the proper airlift, and you need the proper room balance with it. We're pleased that in the next 12 months, our room stock will increase by 10%. That will actually open the doors for new arrivals. So when we worked hand in hand with CITA, our stakeholders, SITA, Sister Island stakeholders, the CAL team, the Department of Tourism, the Ministry of Tourism, and the government, we looked at the centers of wealth in the western part of the United States. And we looked at where we thought the opportunities were. And it's very clear to us that there is tremendous opportunity in the western part of the United States. Then we had to understand what would be the first gateway. And I emphasize first gateway that we open out of the western part of the United States. And the fact that Cayman Airways has the new MAXs coming, the ability for them to reach all the way to any part of the United States, gave us the ability to look at what we thought was going to be the first gateway, and we're very pleased that it's Denver. When we look at Denver, we realize that it's going to give us our first entry point. It helps us connect our feeder markets. It will help us have a competitive edge in the Los Angeles market, the San Francisco market, Seattle, Vancouver, and look at how we do those connections through Denver. It also, and I can tell you this morning, it has also stirred the interest of stakeholders to start looking at what their arrival numbers are from these other gateways now that they see direct service coming to the western part of the United States. We understand clearly that we have to offer convenience, we have to offer competitive fares, and these are dominant decision makers for the people who travel here. We're very confident and pleased that the team that we have that works together allows us to make that offering to stay-over visitors. Colorado is ranked as the fastest growing state for scuba divers, a very important part of our tourism market. Last year, over 13,000 passengers arrived from Denver without direct service. So obviously we feel that there's a real opportunity there. The nonstop service will certainly support advertising and promotions, stimulate the market, but the important part here, it will be done in combination with Cayman Airways, Department of Tourism, and our private sector partners and stakeholders who are working extremely close with this new opening of the Denver Gateway. It has been mentioned and said that we are fortunate as a country to have Cayman Airways as our partner in tourism. I believe that you've seen the results of working with the strategic partnership of Cayman Airways and how our arrivals continue to grow. The new gateway announcement today just gives strength to that, and we certainly look forward to it. As has been mentioned, the approximately 5-hour route will be the longest scheduled commercial flight that Cayman Airways has undertaken in its 50-year history. I think it's a tremendous feat at this part of its history. The route expansion is necessary for us to continue to meet our goal of promoting new arrivals, along with our new airport that will open in December. The government, Ministry, and Department of Tourism stakeholders look forward to attracting more visitors from the Western United States and Canada, and we look forward to our partnership with Cayman Airways. Thank you all very much. I will now turn over to the Director of Tourism, Ms. Rosa Harris.
Good morning, everyone. The Cayman Islands Department of Tourism, in partnership with Cayman Airways, is proud of the strategic decision made to launch nonstop service from Denver, Colorado. As a destination marketing organization, we feel that this is an excellent move for new business for Cayman. This route development initiative will support our destination goals for increased awareness, increased visitation, but also with the flattening of seasonality to broaden the number of visitors that come to our shores each year. If you look at the United States and what our visitation is like currently, if you slice it from Chicago down to Texas, and then you go over to New York and Boston down to Florida, we have a lot of visitation. But on the other side of the United States, there isn't very much activity based on the other side. So I just wanted to share this morning, a few facts about the market and the traveler. Over the 5-year visitation for the Cayman Islands, 4 Western states have performed for us. But Denver, with the least amount of population, has seen great growth for us as a destination. I just want to help the minister just a second to correct a statistic, because I know we like statistics. The 13,000 is two-way traffic to and from Denver. 6,000, and I can update that statistic for you this morning that grew to 7,505 in 2017. So about 15,000 roughly both ways. That demonstrates the propensity for growth. Imagine nonstop service. Colorado overall has 3 million people. It's of the 10 biggest states population wise, only Florida has seen more growth than Denver. The airport saw its busiest year in 2016 with 58 million passengers, and the busiest year for international passengers through the airport. When we look at our data as well, we're a very outdoor society for vacations. So diving, water sports, the caves and the bluff in Cayman Brac, Little Cayman again with phenomenal diving. Persons from Denver like to be outside. So what do we know about them? They have active and healthy lifestyles. Forbes voted them in the top 20 of healthiest cities in the United States. They are in the top 25 best cities for outdoor enthusiasts. And of course, we gave the statistic earlier about diving. And then also it is a city that has attracted millennials and urban families. So you'll see a mix of multi-generational travel out of the Denver area. So you'll have families, young families, you'll have couples. We expect a lot of multi-generational groups. This is a very healthy market for us to pursue, and we stand in support in the marketing activity for our national airline. It is a pleasure to be at this table today providing such great news to Cayman. Thank you. Hand over now to CEO Mr. Worms.
Morning, everyone. I'll stick to the more operational and technical elements of this whole thing, because clearly the reason to go to Denver has been well explained, and I personally think it will be a great success. I think one of the things we should recognize is that the Cayman Islands government, in using its own tool, Cayman Airways, is able to do something that practically would not be very easy to do with another airline serving us from another country. The amount of strategic effort that went into this, and the planning, and the investment. There is an investment that goes into this, because in launching any new route, there's a certain period where you're not expected to necessarily be profitable, but it's an investment you make leading to profitability, and that's from the airlines side. From the country's side, I'd say from day one, from the very inception, the investment will be a profitable one because, of course, there's the economic return that we derive from the visitors that come to our shores in terms of their expenditure and so on. In terms of the operation itself, the flights will be on Wednesdays and Saturdays. It will originate in Grand Cayman at 8 a.m. During the winter season, and we'll only do about 2 or 3 flights during what we call the winter season. Our schedule switches over when daylight saving times kicks in, because then we have to rearrange our flight times out of here to align with the slots that are available in Denver. So our flight will leave here, Grand Cayman, at 8 a.m. in the morning and arrive in Denver at 11 o'clock their time. Then it departs Denver at 12:15 in the afternoon their time, gets into Cayman at 7:15 our time. The summer schedule will see the departure time from Grand Cayman being approximately an hour later. All the times will be approximately an hour later because daylight saving time kicks in. The 737 MAX 8, it's a very, as the chairman mentioned, it's the reason why this is able to happen. But the significance of us saying non-stop service, let me explain how significant that is. It typically takes someone now between 9 and 11 hours to get to Grand Cayman from Denver with a stop in the United States. Our block time is 5 hours. The flight time is actually a little bit less. So we're literally shaving that time in half. We expect to be able to command a bit of a premium to do this. But to break into the market, we have some introductory fares, which are significantly, I would venture to say significantly lower than most of the fares that are available now with a stop where it would take you 9 to 11 hours. Our introductory fares will be starting at $396 US without taxes. With taxes, you're looking at just under $530. So we expect to use that to stimulate the market. Again, this is a strategy that's not necessarily beneficial for Cayman Airways, but the country's bottom line will benefit from this sort of activity. The MAX itself, we are launching this service with the 737-8 MAX. By February, we will have 2 in service, and this service to Denver launches on March 3. So we're not attempting to start the service when we only have 1 MAX. We want to be completely reliable with the service, so we will have 2 aircraft that are able to fulfill this mission, which is one of the reasons why we're not starting until March 3rd, because we really wanted to have the 2 MAXs in place. With the MAX, we'll be able to offer our customers the same sort of service, or I venture to say probably a better service than they would have if they came here on a U.S. carrier, because let's face it, we're going to be flying newer aircraft than what the other carriers have. We will have onboard Wi-Fi. When we spoke about the MAXs initially, we spoke about the MAXs having internet Wi-Fi connectivity from the factory. A lot has changed since then, and what we're looking at now, because of the technological advancement that have taken place, is a more cost-effective form of in-flight entertainment that we can offer at no charge. If we had Wi-Fi on board, it's so expensive we would have to charge for it. And in this age of airlines being seen to have charges upon charges upon charges, despite the fact that we had to introduce bag fees recently, we're still trying to keep our charges at a minimum or not have certain charges that other airlines have. So we've come up with a product that will have a large amount of onboard content. Much of it will be promotional content to educate our passengers. You know, the instant they get on the airplane, they'll start learning about the Turtle Center and so on, and what Cayman is all about, Stingray City and so on. Of course, there'll be the traditional in-flight entertainment elements as well, such as movies and TV shows and We expect to even have the news on board, the Cayman News. So, we'll be working with the media houses so that the night before we can download their content so that, someone coming to Cayman from Denver or anywhere on one of our maxes, for instance, would be able to read some of our news. Anyway, that's a little bit extra. That's about the maxes, but it's part of the overall experience. As we're having this press conference here today, simultaneously, the Denver authorities are having one as well. And they are extremely pleased with Cayman Airways flying into Denver. They're so pleased that their mayor is a part of their celebrations. And I think later this year, as part of our marketing and promotions, we will be hosting an event in Denver for the Denver community to give exposure to what we're trying to do. And this will be done, of course, in conjunction with the city of Denver, the mayor, and all of their authorities. One thing that they're extremely proud of, which Chairman Rankin, I believe, touched on earlier, is that we're going to be the first Caribbean airline serving Denver. So what typically happens is the U.S. airlines have their hub and spoke infrastructure, and they can get from their hubs, which would be Charlotte, Miami, Dallas, Houston, New York. They can get from their hubs people from anywhere in the United States. So the concept of them flying from Denver direct to Cayman, which ties up a piece of equipment for about 12 hours, for the return trip, that's not something that fits very easily into a large airline's business plan. It would mean them dedicating, quite a bit of resources and equipment to do that when they can move the passengers otherwise. So if we want to grow our tourism and we really want to make the islands more convenient, then what are we left with? We're left with using Cayman Airways to do that. And as the minister said, this is the first step moving towards the west. There will be further movement towards the west. That is where the future of Cayman Airways lies. It will lie with longer missions, giving direct flights, giving the jurisdiction a competitive advantage over the other competing tourism jurisdictions that will not have these direct flights from these distant gateways. So I think with that, I probably will turn it over to the media for questions.
Thank you, Mr. Worms. Is it on? And all members of the panel, will open it up to questions, and we ask that you please limit your questions to Cayman Airways, and if there are any other questions, we can address them after the press conference. So who would like to go first?
One quick one. Let me just make a correction. I said the launch date was March 3. It's March 2. Sorry.
Hey. Yeah, I just want to pick up on the point that Mr. Worms just mentioned about moving west. Do you think that the American Airlines, not American Airlines, but the US airlines are covering the East Coast now sufficiently that you can move Cayman Airways to more of the strategic tourism routes and less of the core routes? And what are the cost implications of that? I guess that's a question for the minister in terms of what you'll have to pay for them to do routes that aren't necessarily commercially profitable.
I think the first part of the question is, do we believe that the U.S. carriers will also move to Western?
No. I said, is the East Coast sufficiently covered that Cayman Airways can effectively move out of that? I mean, if you've got 4 aircraft, I guess you're going to potentially have to do that if you go west or even go to London, as was mentioned.
Right. It's an excellent question, and we'll take a little time to talk about strategically the value of Cayman Airways and what it has been able to accomplish in the eastern part of the United States. If you look at what happened in New York, which is a very good example, we are very competitive out of New York. We go to daily out of New York, and JetBlue also comes out of New York with a very high load factor. The importance for that gateway is that they're the highest spend tourist that arrives here, and we're very pleased from the strategic value of Cayman Airways, how it penetrates that market It allows a very competitive price because JetBlue is not the only carrier coming out of there. It has to be sensitive to price. And we believe that the people who arrive from there spend around $7,000 a week in the Cayman Islands. So you can see what that allows. If we partner strategically with Cal, it costs us a couple $100 to bring somebody here on Cal, and they spend $7,000. The country's $6,800 farther ahead by doing this. So we believe that that same model will be successful in the western part of the United States. And we're not going into Denver with the idea that if another major carrier puts a flight into Denver, that it's not good for our country. It's going to be very good for the country. But Cayman Airways has delivered on a strategic mission of opening up the West. Now all of a sudden maybe we have two carriers coming directly out of the West. There are quite a few centers of wealth that we would like to attract more visitors from in the western part of the United States. Remember that it's about the same time to go to Hawaii from LA as it is to come to Cayman. But there are no direct flights from LA to Cayman, where there are direct flights. So the convenience of going to Hawaii is much greater and easier and gives them the competitive advantage now over Cayman. But as we look at the West, you see the value of the different direct flights that we start to look and open in those gateways. I hope that helped with the question.
Yeah, I mean, I guess what I was really asking though was the ability to do both. I mean, presumably you've got to divert resources because you have the same number of planes from what you're doing on the East Coast to fulfill this mission on the West Coast. So are you moving away from those routes that are profitable for the airlines, such as Miami, and moving to routes that are profitable for the country, but not necessarily for the airline?
So you mentioned Miami. Let us think about Miami for a minute. We used to have 3 flights every day out of Miami. American now has 3 flights, and they started with 1. Southwest has a daily flight out of the same basic catchment area in South Florida. JetBlue starts daily flights next month out of the same catchment basin. Obviously, Cal has done what it needed to do by providing lift out of that area. So if it's no longer needed the lift in that area, we can take that same equipment and look at something that brings more value to the country itself.
And that, I mean, perhaps Mr. Worms can speak to that, but it's not necessarily more value to Cayman Airways. Are you going to increase the funding to Cayman Airways to make this happen?
Well, what we're doing is looking at what the value to the country is, and we believe the value of taking that plane and flying into Denver will bring a higher profit to the country as the profit center.
And just to add also, when you talk about Miami, we have cut back Miami significantly. The days that we had 9 flights to Cuba per week, we no longer have that. We're down perhaps about 3 flights a week. And the throughput from Miami with the Cuban travelers are not there. So we've actually, this past year, reduced the number of flights to Miami. Some days we only got the 1 flight up and the 1 flight back. That's many days. We do have some days that we have connecting passengers to Honduras. So those are the days that we may have an afternoon flight that connects. But we're looking at ways to restructure all of that as well. The other thing about moving away from other gateways, we've actually pulled out of Dallas. That gives us the ability now to add this Denver flight. We have 3 great airlines that's now covering the Texas region. When we went in there were no direct flights, and they were not interested in doing direct flights until we did. So we all felt that, the DOT and government and ourselves, we felt that Dallas or the Texas region now is well covered, well established by 3 great airlines. So, those are some of the things that provide. We have to look at other ways now, track from a different region, that we were not able to go into before.
You mentioned, you just dropped it in there, the potential of a route to London via Bermuda. Is that something that's seriously being considered?
Well, it's something that's not on the table at the moment, but it's the capability of that aircraft. If we so desire to do that, we could do that.
So, James, if I could finish the answer to that question. When you look at a gateway, we haven't approached the gateway independently at Cayman Airways. We've looked at the gateway of how do we partner with the stakeholder who is interested in getting business out of that area? How do we partner with the ministry? How do we partner with the department? And how do we partner with government to make sure that everybody works to make that gateway successful? So when London comes on the radar, it'll be that kind of cumulative issue of putting everybody and getting commitments that's market that the stakeholders want to pursue and want to saturate and look at it from a pricing standpoint and building it. And that's the same approach we'll have for the other gateways as well.
If I might add, James, you had as a part of your question, by chance, might we be diverting, maybe some of our resources from New York, as an example, to Denver? On the contrary, the way we're going to be utilizing our equipment for this winter season, we're actually ramping up to daily New York flights, which is something we've never done. Tuesday, as an example, which is our slowest day in all markets, we will now have a flight to New York along with every other day of the week. And it's because that market performs so well. And what we have found is that competition on that market has been actually good for us because it's caused the market to grow. And the minister mentioned that it's our key market in terms of the expenditure made by a tourist from that market. So that's the one where we get the most bang for the buck in terms of the economic return. And as Cayman Airways, we're always focused on how does our contribution create the best economic return for the Cayman Islands. So that's why we're ramping up New York.
Okay, can I just check you spoke about New York being the highest spend. So where does the spending power or the spending level, of people from Colorado come at the moment? And you gave us the increase, like you said, 7,000, but how does that compare to other areas of the US? Okay. So that sort of numbers and figures, just to make it a bit clearer. Also, I appreciate what you're saying about profit for the country as opposed to profit from the airline. So that does mean this route will have to be subsidized. Have we got figures on what kind of money you'll have to inject to make it work?
There's two parts of it. One is opening the route, and we're looking at that now with a commitment that we will help in the opening of it. As was indicated, there are special fares to open the route and from a marketing standpoint and build a throughput. It was also talked of how they're reorganizing other routes and taking advantage of some of the equipment that's not needed in some of the routes. So at this time, we're not looking at any more funding for Cal, but we are certainly very aware of what the value of Cayman Airways is to this country.
Okay, so just to clarify, there won't be any extra cash have to be injected at the next budget to do it. It'll come out of the existing money that you pump in.
Correct.
Okay, so I just need the numbers. Also, I know it's not quite related, but it is a little bit about the MAX 8. It's been a while since it got raised. Is the runway still on the cards, and is it important for these new planes? I'm assuming it can't because there's no runway, so either they're putting on the brakes fast or it's fine. But is the runway still in consideration? I know it's not quite as relevant, but I just thought it will, the whole MAX 8 thing, bigger planes.
Let me explain what it means for the MAX 8.
Yeah.
The runway as it is now, we will be able to undertake the Denver mission with no problems, with full loads. To go beyond Denver, which the aircraft definitely has the capability to do, but it now would have to carry more fuel, which means the aircraft takeoff weight increases, which means you need higher power settings to get to that speed where you can rotate or you need a longer runway to get to that speed where you can rotate. And at the moment, with the runway the length it is, it would be a challenge for us to go too much further than Denver with full loads. As an example, we have been to LA on charters with our 737-800, which has similar performance characteristics to the MAX 8, runway performance characteristics, that is. But that was not with a full load. It was with a charter with maybe, I think, between 30 and 40 people. So the answer is Denver is not an issue. Beyond Denver it will be, but the Airports Authority has been in the process of, I think they're doing RFPs now for the design considerations to lengthen the runway by, I think it's between 500 and 900 feet. What we have found is that 500 feet extra is all we really need to get to somewhere like LA. If we were talking about somewhere now like Vancouver, and I use these gateways as examples, because I know the next question will be, well, are those under consideration? But there's a reason we choose these examples as well, so do the math. Somewhere like Vancouver, we probably will need the 900 feet. The alternative is we'd have to upgrade the thrust ratings on the engines, and the engines on these aircraft are capable of higher thrust. It's just that it comes with a price, and it's fairly expensive.
So the other gateways are under consideration.
Good morning, Ralph Lewis.
Yes, sure. So for spend, I'll give you spend overall for stay over. For the first 6 months of the year in 2017, our average spending per person per night was $219 US. That grew in 2018 for January to June to $231.60. This is based on the Department of Tourism's exit survey. The sentiment with the spend for the New York traveler is intelligence that we gather from our partners. So we speak with the hoteliers on a monthly basis and talk about markets. The two top markets for spend are New York and Texas. New York brings us the winter travelers, and Texas brings us the summer traffic because their summers are so uncomfortably hot. So you have two states that are carrying the affluence. I wanted to reference as well, you asked
for Colorado then, the actual numbers.
In terms of household income, I do.
Okay.
I do have household income. I just don't have that graph with me now, but I can forward it to you. Absolutely. I can tell you that those from Denver are an average age of 40. 52% of the base is female. They spend an average of 6.6 nights. Saturdays are the most popular day for travel, and their connection point is through Miami. When we look at the Caribbean, and I think this is of most significance for Cayman Airways, there's no other island within the Caribbean region that has direct service from Denver. If we were to consider the outskirts of the Caribbean, there's Cancun, there's Cozumel, there's Panama City, and I believe also not on my map is Belize. Belize does have direct service by a U.S. carrier. The market is wide open for Cayman to carve this out.
Yes, this question is for the minister. From time to time, we hear concerns about the country owning its own airline. Can you re-emphasize the importance of the airline to the Cayman Islands in the medium to long term? And secondly, have you considered Toronto? As we know, there's a big need for that route as well.
Yeah. Very pleased to talk about the value of Cayman Airways from a country standpoint. I think we've talked about what it does from the visitation part of it, but it also has 400 employees that 95% 5% are Caymanians. It helps form the middle class of this country. It's a perfect example to sit here today and see the CEO is Caymanian. He speaks a little bit like a Jamaican, but he spent some time there. His heart is Caymanian. When you look at what that does and the pride that it brings from the standpoint, again, of this country, I don't know how you put a value on those planes in all of our different gateways that say Cayman on the side of them. That's like having a billboard there every day that they fly in there. So these are all values that we never put on paper, but certainly help us deliver to the market. The idea of we have growth in our industry. We have rooms coming online. We talked about 10%, but in the next 3 years we'll have 20% more rooms. We have a very successful vacation owner and Airbnb program that are converting homes in every district to overnight visitation. We want to take advantage of that to offer Caymanians opportunities to be pilots, to be engineers, to be accountants, to be HR professionals, to be marketing professionals. Another Caymanian sitting there, professional. So the whole wide range that is open to us and our people is delivered by Cayman Airways that no other Caribbean country has at their disposal. So we like to talk about Cayman Airways. Sorry?
Canada.
If you look at Toronto, it has service now. And if we thought there was a need for the service to be increased, the opportunities are to talk to the people, the airline partners that are now providing that. What we are seeing is a reaction to the industry itself. We see them putting on larger planes, and we see them adding flights. So if they did two things, if they raised the price to a point that it was affecting our arrivals, we have Cayman Airways. And if we saw an overflow that wasn't being met by their hardware being in the market, we have Cayman Airways. At this point, we're satisfied that they're delivering.
Sorry, Minister, can I just clarify? You said there's going to be a 10% increase in room stock next year, 2019. Can you say where that's coming from?
If you drive down the West Bay Road, Margaritaville has another 100 rooms that they're going to open shortly. The NCB Hotel is 100. The Tides condo in South Sound is going to come online the next couple of months. You see the sign for Locale, again on West Bay Road. You see a bed and breakfast going up in East End. And then you have the conversion through the homes at condos for Airbnb and the luxury market.
More questions. I think that concludes our press conference for this morning. And I'd like to invite the panel to join us for a photo op by the backdrop.